Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory. Training camp is in full force. Mitch, what's going on?
What's going on, dude? Huge week where the Dynasty Theory crew will be in Canton for the expo. The Fantasy Effect crew will be there. We have some good friends from the Discord who are also showing up. And then we have like real training camp stuff to talk about. Like everyone might look at, oh, it's just another running back 2 episode. But this stuff matters. I mean, Zack Moss last year, Jerome Ford last year, Devin A-Chain last year, Kyron Williams last year. This stuff is actually extremely important if you want to be really good at Dynasty and even just redraft this upcoming season.
It's why I like to fill the back of my roster typically with running backs. It's all about roster construction when it comes down to it. If you have those higher value Dynasty running backs, it's easier than to say, okay, maybe I'll go with more depth at wide receiver or vice versa. So it really depends how you build your roster. If I'm in a league where I have the high end wide receiver talent, I'm in a startup right now. That's kind of the way it's going for me. I'm probably going to end up with a lot of lower end running backs because when it comes down to it, and you know this, and I think a lot of our listeners know this, there isn't really a spike in value even if these low end wide receivers produce. Like what during his little stretch last year, what was Tutu Atwell moving for?
So, but he wasn't. Like he just wasn't moving.
Yeah. Hey, should I hold out for a second? I have a third on the table. Just take that third, because when it comes down to it, you're not getting more of a return. But with these running backs, and Mitch, you hit the nail on the head with some of the names, like Jerome Ford last year, there were times when, if you go back and look, it was probably part of a bigger deal, but first were probably included in those deals. I for the most part, like I know you and I, depending on how our roster and our season was going, we were either moving seconds to get Jerome Ford, and that's just a specific name for this example, but you can put any running back. Chuba Hubbard was moving at a solid price. Just looking through some names here. I mean, Jaleel.
Yes.
He was moving. Like that is why we like to spend time on this. And there's no better time than right now when we're going through training camp. We are seeing, I don't care about, Jaylen Warren broke a big run in training camp. That doesn't matter. And I think you certainly agree. You made a comment on last week's episode about that, especially when there's no pads. That doesn't matter. What we care about is the pecking order. What we care about is who is leading that battle, if it's for the running back 1 spot, who is leading the backup position, because there's so many running backs that they have that contingent value. Yeah, they're not going to do anything for you off the bat, but if somebody were to go down ahead of them, they're going to be one of the highly sought after backs in the league from a cost to production ratio, if you will. And you might be seeing some of these guys move for a second. So like you said, yeah, there's so many episodes. There's so many episodes about running back 2s that you should be looking to acquire. So many episodes about every podcast right now is about training camp. That's what's going on. And we want to spend time on it. We want to be able to give you our thoughts. So Mitch, some training camp battles. And like you said, a lot of them are running back. I asked you, I said, Mitch, are there any tight end or wide receiver battles you want to talk about?
No.
And you said, no, not really. Why was
that? Is it? It's tight end is hard, right? Because you're going to need even the guys we like. Let's talk about Pat Freiermuth for a minute that we talked about last week, right? We have hope that he can get 7 targets a week. We have no idea, and he's really good. So do I really want to break down whoever the tight end 2 is going to be for the Jaguars? Like, absolutely not. And those guys are going to be on waivers no matter what. So even if something happens to Evan Ingram, you're going to go out and you're going to be able to get whoever the backup is off waivers. And when a tight end goes out, that doesn't mean his replacement is going to be just as good. There's not a whole bunch of Isaiah Likeleys in the league that are going to go in and just get the Mark Andrews target share the second he goes in. They're going to get like a quarter of the target share because they're just not as good as the starting tight end.
Travis Kelce, Noah Gray.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people were going crazy about Noah Gray. It's like, but he's not going to get targeted like Travis Kelce. That's just how it works.
Yeah, probably the more interesting battles might be like a Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger.
Don't tease me with Theo Johnson, man. I have a lot of Theo Johnson.
It sounds like, and I know, do you see how I'm getting
there was a report?
But I'm getting a tight end battle out of Mitch, everybody.
I like it.
That's what I do. I got to dig a little bit. He's like an onion. You peel back the layers, peel back a few layers, and you're right there. But you mentioned like Theo Johnson. You have so many shares of him. He's got the athletic profile. That situation is wide open. It might be Daniel Bellinger, but this is a situation where maybe both can give you low-end production. If Bellinger misses time, maybe it's Theo Johnson that really gives you an uptick. So it's not necessarily a situation where we're talking about replacing a high-end tight end. It's a room where it's wide open. We talked about Mike Gesicki last week, right? Mm-hmm. Or was that 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
You know, you could talk about that Cincinnati Bengals tight end room. Like, so there are some situations where maybe you just go for your favorite guy because right now it's wide open and the price tag is reasonable.
Yeah, there's a few battles like that, but the problem is, let's say Theo Johnson even does really well, right? How well does he have to do for him to even hit your starting lineup, and how well does he have to do for people to want to trade for him? Theo Johnson's kind of the outlier because he's a rookie with the athletic profile that you brought up. But there's a lot of backups that just don't have that, right? To where they could go in and I'm still not going to go out and trade for them. This isn't like I was bringing up Isaiah Likely scenario. Like if Sam Laporta goes down, like I'm not going to be a huge Brock Wright guy. It's not going to happen.
It's like whenever, what was it, 2-3 years ago, I kissed my fab goodbye. I got so much Drew Sample when was it Uzoma that went down in week 1 and Sample came in and I spend so much fab.
Didn't he have like good one? I think his week 2 was even good. And then he did like nothing after that, if I remember correctly.
All I can say is it was certainly a small sample size.
Well,
let's get to some running backs here. I'm going to throw some tight ends there just to throw a few names. But speaking of the Bengals, Chase Brown and Zach Moss, that seems to be one of the hot topics right now. And I want to throw a quote at everybody. And I'm sure many of you saw this. And Mitch yelled at me. He said, John, with how many battles we have on our show notes, if we include quotes for every single pair, we provide our analysis, we provide market information, it's going to be a day-long episode. So I don't have a quote for everyone, but this is one that really caught my eye. If I could play fantasy football, I would take him as my first running back. He's going to have a year. I guarantee it. Special talent, special player. From Bengals offensive tackle Orlando Brown on running back Chase Brown. Maybe he just liked the last name, so he's really hyping him up. But the market value has shifted between Chase Brown and Zach Moss. I know earlier in the offseason, there was, I don't want to say hype around Zach Moss, but people were more willing to invest in him. And now we're looking at it, fantasy calc, Chase Brown running back 33, Zach Moss running back 36, KTC a little bit wider of a gap. We know KTC, it's just based on quick input, so take it with a grain of salt. But Chase Brown running back 30, Zach Moss running back 39. How do you view the situation? Where would you look at both of these guys if they're both healthy? And then maybe talk about the upside if one were to miss time.
Yeah, it's the best ball bros are all about Chase Brown, and that's why his value's going up, because it comes down to this. Like, let's say they both stay healthy the whole year. Which one is actually giving you the most starting upside? We know what Zach Moss is. Zach Moss is a guy who's going to go out and give you that average production, right? But what we've seen with Chase Brown, he has the elite top end speed. He had, everyone brings up he hit like 22 miles per hour last season. Sorry. The only player that was faster than that in a game was DK Metcalf, who we all know is a freak. And Zach Moss is he's just a guy, right? We know what Zach Moss is his 5th year in his career. And Chase Brown just gives you the upside that we've talked about. We did a guest spot with Scott over on the Destination Devy radio show, right? We did that, and we're just like, people love the unknown. They love the upside. They love what we haven't seen yet, but what could happen. Chase Brown is that guy. So even for me, I would much rather have Chase Brown than Zach Moss, because I think Chase Brown's upside is just so much higher than what Zach Moss is going to give you. And yeah, I think Zach Moss is going to be an okay-ish flex play when he's healthy throughout the season. But that's it. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be more than that. Even if Chase Brown goes down, I don't think Zach Moss is going to give you that elite upside. But if Zach Moss goes down, Chase Brown then, on that other hand, he could break off that 80-yard touchdown run. He could break off his 60-yard screen pass for a touchdown. And that's kind of what everyone's looking at. So for me, it's Chase Brown. I think the values are very good. Running back 30 for Chase Brown, almost 40 on KTC for Zach Moss. I think that's fair, to be honest, because let's say Zach Moss goes out and has the exact same year that he had last year with the Colts. He was good. He was playable. He was startable. Where's his value going into next year in Dynasty? It's probably going to be running back 42, 43. It's never going up. Chase Brown at least has the upside to hit running back 20 within, by October this year.
I see Jerry in the chat. Hit that like button, y'all. Our hype man. I appreciate that, Jerry. Chase Brown, like you said, Mitch, a little bit of the unknown. Right now, it sounds like from reports, and I know we're not the only people talking about this. I know. But if you only listen to Dynasty Theory, we want to throw it out there for you. He's taken a majority of the first team reps right now, Chase Brown. Like I said, over the last month, there's been a flip in market value. When you look at the two, I think there's maybe a little bit more involvement from Chase Brown in the passing game. He's more explosive. That 4.4, 3.40. Zach Moss, 4.65. Nothing wrong with that. Very similar range to David Montgomery. We love David Montgomery. I think Moss is going to handle a little bit more of the groundwork. And, I say Chase Brown may be getting more involved in the passing game. Historically, neither of these guys were all that involved in the pass game. Cincinnati is going to be such a high pass to run ratio. Even if one of these guys happens to go down and misses significant time, running back 18 to 22-ish.
Yeah.
Is that the ceiling? And then is it fair to say if neither of them miss time, low end running back 3 to flex plays, maybe?
You're going to pray the one that you're starting is getting the touchdown that week. That's what you're hoping for. Because, without the touchdown, these guys are going to be hard to be playable with both of them healthy.
And we talk about the speed for Chase Brown, the elusiveness. Chase Brown had 3.27 yards after contact per attempt last year. Out of the sample that I looked at, there were 72 running backs in there. He was 16th. Again, not a huge sample size. And then Zach Moss, 2.79, only 0.5 difference, but that was 49th out of the 72 running backs. For context, in that same offense that we talk about Chase Brown being 16th, Mixon, who everybody is loving them some Mixon in Houston, he was 62nd out of 72. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom for Zach Moss. Last year, per NFL Next Gen Stats, he was number 5 in rush yards over expected per attempt. Number 5. So he still can give you that startability. I just think we really need to, I don't want to say temper expectations, because I think they're tempered for the most part. And I think you're right, Mitch. I think a lot of people, they're buying into Chase Brown being that potential longer term option for the Cincinnati Bengals. Longer term as we can call it when it comes to the running back position. Whereas Zach Moss, yeah, he's there. They brought him in. Chase Brown's under contract till 2026. So if we see something from him, you then have a 2-year window in that Bengals offense where he is dirt cheap, that he really could have a nice return. So I think it's an interesting situation. And there's a lot of situations here, Mitch, that we're looking at, and it's kind of expected to be a 1-2 punch, with maybe one back getting more involvement in the passing game, one getting more on the ground. but it's going to be kind of a common theme of this episode.
It is. This is what the NFL is now. I mean, for every Christian McCaffrey, there is 10 Jaylen Warrens against Najee Harris's in the NFL, right? We just are not getting the elite workhorse running back anymore, and it's fine. I mean, John, do you see a Rachaad White happening out of any rookie this year that we had with Tampa Bay last year?
Oh man, Rachaad White. And all right, so like just going through the list.
A guy who took over the backfield and there was really nobody behind him.
Well, last year was his second year.
Okay, whatever. Second year, fine.
I was like, wait a minute.
For me, he was a rookie, but it's fine. It's fine.
And I had the chance to speak to the man.
Yeah, there you go. Well, anyways, so include second-year running backs
that can really take over. Yeah. That's at a deflated price. Looking through. Oh man. Like with that kind of volume in the passing game.
Right.
I'm scrolling. Bear with me. That they don't require an injury.
Yeah. Like they just straight up take it over week 1.
Oh, I don't see it. I don't see it.
See, that's the problem, right? Is there's so many of these. And so I think the actual art to it now is figuring out which ones are kind of set. We're going to talk about a backfield coming up here in a few to where there's a running back 2 battle happening right now, but I'm not sure it's actually the running back 2 as soon as the season starts. Yeah, these guys are on the team, training camp reports, but I really think either of them can be replaced immediately. So those are the landmines I'm trying to get out of more so than like trying to pick the exact running back 2 I want to go like 60% of my shares on this year.
Yeah, the price point comes into play, and if you have to trade for them, if you have to, look at the waivers. I see Dustin saying he'll be at the Expo on Sunday. Mitch and I are going to be there Thursday through Saturday. We are actually leaving Sunday morning, so if you happen to be there early, if anybody's there, come say hi. Talk to you. I see Josh in the chat. What's up, Ty? What's going on, guys? Before we move on, one last thing I want to say, and this kind of goes for all of these, but I want people to keep it in mind. When we're talking about these backs, as things stand today, we look at what they realistically could provide, barring an injury to their counterpart, but then the upside and potential from a shorter and somewhat longer term perspective, if they were to escape that 1-2 punch within their backfield, but also their current price to acquire. Like, is Zack Moss at his current price with current expectations, potential upside if Chase Brown were to miss time, a better buy than a Jaylen Warren at his current price, his expected production, and then his contingent upside if Najee were to miss time? So I think that's what you have to weigh. If all things are somewhat equal, go for the cheapest option.
Yes.
Sell, just for this example, sell your Jaylen at his current market, buy Zack Moss or Chase Brown at their current market. Get very minimal difference in their expected production, potential upside, and then you turn that profit. It might be small, but I think you do that over time, especially if you have a larger portfolio. That's kind of the process move there that can really help you out. So as we always do here on Dynasty Theory, we spent just over 19 minutes talking about the Bengals. Let's go not far for me, certainly. Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris. Najee Harris, fantasy calc running back 23, KTC running back 25. Jaylen Warren, a little bit wider of a gap. Fantasy calc 32, KTC running back 24. Not same exact kind of questions here for you, Mitch. How does their value right now, based on the market, compare to how you look at them? What is their current expectation for you, barring an injury? And then how high can these guys go if either of them misses time?
Yeah, so I really think the offenses play. We talked about the Bengals just a second ago, and the Bengals are a very good offense. We expect them to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. We expect the Steelers to be one of the worst. And so I know they're going to rush the ball a lot. I have a hard time buying into either of these guys at their prices right now because it comes down to Najee is the guy that I still like. I think he has the highest touchdown upside, but I'm not hating on Jaylen Warren there, but my problem is with Arthur Smith last year. Bijan, 1,000 times better than Tyler Algier, right? Just flat out is. Last year, Bijan got 270 touches. Algier got 200. I really think it's going to be the exact same. And I do not care who you like more, whether it's Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris. Did I mess up on a name, John?
No, you didn't mess up, but I'm laughing because you called him Algie.
No,
like
yeah.
I kind of like it.
I got to shorten up names because I messed them up too much. But
the old Alginator.
Exactly. Like I was saying, it doesn't matter which one. It doesn't matter who is more talented. Arthur Smith is going to split the snaps. And then guess what? When one of them gets injured, neither of them is taking over the backfield. Cordero Patterson's going to come in. Maybe it's LaMichael P. Ryan. It doesn't matter. Someone else is going to take 50% of those snaps. So my hardest thing is I believe this offense is going to be bottom 10 in the NFL, minimum. And then you're telling me you might have a quarterback in Justin Fields if he starts, which reports are now kind of coming out. Maybe he ends up starting because Russ Wilson hasn't even practiced a lot, even in the 11-on-11s. So then you have maybe a rushing quarterback who doesn't pass to running backs in a really bad offense. And I'm like, that's not a running back situation I want to buy into, especially if I can't pick the one that's actually going to get all the touchdown work. Yeah, maybe I think Najee's going to do it. Maybe it's Jaylen that does it. Maybe it's not, though. Maybe they do it to Cordero Patterson, which we all know will happen in an Arthur Smith offense. So my biggest thing, dude, I love Najee. March, April, May, and then I just started thinking more and more about this situation. And right now, I would rather have Chase Brown or Zach Moss. I mean, cost dependent, of course, if I'm just basing it off values, then I want Jaylen Warren or Najee Harris because I just can't have faith in either one of those guys for pretty much the whole season.
If there's any opportunity to pivot off of, I'm looking at their current market values. If you can do a Najee Harris for a David Montgomery type situation,
yes,
or, a small ad, Najee Harris valued over Javonte Williams, with Jaylen Warren valued over Brian Robinson, who has his own potential running back situation there in Washington. But it's, you look at what happened last year, and that offense was so bad, right? But week 7 on last year, the bye week was week 6. Najee Harris was at 13.5 points per game in PPR. Jaylen Warren was at 12.2. I expect the offense as a whole to be better, but they're still giving you like that. That's maybe low end running back 2, high end running back 3 appeal there. It doesn't do it for me. So I think if there's pivot opportunities, or if you can do something cross positionally, like there is a market there still on those backs.
Oh,
I see Tyjae in the chat on his Dynasty trade show this week. There was a trade involving CD Lamb, and on the other side, it was like Terry McLaurin, Najee Harris, a pair of firsts. So like people still look at Najee as a guy that can give them production, and I don't think they're wrong. But what is he giving you over replacement? I think that's the big thing. And that's really what sparked my point when we were talking about the Bengals. Go get a back in a similar situation that is cheaper. And, every league has a different market, right? It isn't always possible. So
but there's always a Jaylen Warren fan, man.
Jaylen Warren, George Pickens. There's somebody in every league.
Yep.
Every single league. But, I have a few things here, a few numbers I want to throw at everybody. So running backs with at least 140 carries last year. Jaylen Warren was number 2 in yards after contact per attempt, only behind James Conner. Like everybody calls that out. Everybody is just like, Jaylen Warren was explosive. He was elusive. He was trucking people. We all see the videos of him in at camp in pass protection. Like from an NFL perspective, people like Dan are probably loving Jaylen Warren.
Mm-hmm.
But Najee Harris, he wasn't a slouch by any means. He was 12th out of those 38 backs in yards after contact per attempt. It just didn't look as sexy. It was more grinded out. Could that be simply because of the way they were used? It kind of goes to that Zeke Tony Pollard situation in Dallas. You look at Tony Pollard, once he gets more work, that kind of the efficiency went away a little bit, but he was also coming back from injury. We'll get to Tony Pollard here in a minute. So Najee Harris, number 12 out of 38. I think this is a more extreme. It's a heavier workload Chase Brown, Zach Moss situation. And you look at the two backs, they had the same amount of 10 plus yard runs. Warren had 120 fewer rush attempts than Najee Harris. So again, a little bit more explosive. And then per next gen stats, Warren was number 3 in rush yards over expected per attempt. And Najee was he was plus 0.31. Like he was still giving you more over expected when it comes to the rushing attempts. So I think it's going to be an interesting situation. One last thing, like I said, the usage and the personnel packages, I think it favored Jaylen Warren to an extent. Najee Harris was at 21%, 8+ defenders in the box. Jaylen Warren, 12%. And if you would go back and you would look at different situations across any team, like Tony Pollard, Zeke is just sticking out in my mind. I'm sure that's one that would have kind of reflected that same thing there. So, at the current price, I mean, you've said you prefer Najee in the offense overall, but is that like by default or like you're kind of testing the waters?
I like Najee, like I was saying, going back February, March, because it's what you brought up. Everyone's, hey, Jaylen Warren's this explosive back. Najee was fine last year. He wasn't a bad running back. It's just, it was a bad offense. And we've kind of seen that he will get like those first snaps coming out. So in my view, maybe it means that he'll get the last snaps as well going into the red zone. It's just a play. But like I said, I don't love either of these backs because I do not love this offense.
Well, let's talk about two backs you might love.
Oh, man.
Can we talk about Trey Sermon and Evan Hall out there in Indianapolis? I asked Mitch, I said, let's get a little bit more detailed on our show notes because typically we kind of fly by the what is it?
Seat of our pants?
I was going to say seam of your pants. Seat of your pants?
Oh, I mess these up all the time, so I have no idea.
I think you might be right. Anyway.
That'd be a first.
But the first thing I read here is let me vomit.
Yeah.
Like it's not sexy. I know.
Well, my biggest issue is this is what I was talking about 10 minutes ago. This is a backfield to where if you tell me the Raiders cut Amir Abdullah for whatever reason, right? I could see the Colts immediately picking up a back like that. And he comes in and he's the running back 2 over Trey Sermon and Evan Hull. I think these two are just extremely replaceable. Now, if you're telling me that these two were going to be the running back 2, well, one of them was going to be, and they weren't going to pick anybody up. I would love to say Evan Hull. He's younger. He had a better receiving upside in college, but I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to throw to the running backs. And if he does, it's probably going to be to Jonathan Taylor, right? So I want to be like, yeah, Evan Hull is the right guy to go get. But honestly, it's probably Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon is probably going to just be a guy you could put in because Jonathan Taylor misses a couple weeks, and he's going to be the play over what an Evan Hull is. But are you going to want to play them? No, this is going to be like, hey, my depth chart is raveled by injuries. I have 4 guys on IR already. The waivers have been picked over. I need a guy to start. I'm going to throw Trey Sermon in and hope he could get me 6 to 7 points.
And I bet you there's leagues where, I got to go look. Trey Sermon's probably available in a lot of leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's people that are holding Jonathan Mingo. There's people that are holding Trey Palmer. There's people that are holding, hell, would you rather have Trey Sermon or Elijah Moore?
Oh, Lord.
Who's ever going to potentially do like you'll know when to play Trey Sermon.
Mm-hmm.
It might be never.
Yeah. But you will know when the start decision's there, without a doubt.
And yes, it is seat of your pants.
Yes.
Mitch got it, man.
That's right.
I don't know
batting
why.
5% right now.
Yeah. Anyway, so not too much there on Trey Sermon and Evan Hall. Evan Hall, he probably gets some more of the third down work, but really, how relevant is that going to be in this type of offense?
Mm-hmm.
So I also would go Trey Sermon. It does seem like he has that. I think I saw the one quote from a beat reporter, pretty much locked up, all but locked up, I think was the quote. So let's not spend too much time. But if Trey Sermon's on your waiver wire and you have a bench spot available, or you have somebody that you've just been stashing and you're like, if anybody else comes along, I think Trey Sermon is a good option there, and get him there at the very end of your bench. All right, a little more exciting, maybe.
Yes.
Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. Tony Pollard, fantasy calc, running back 31. KTC, running back 32. Tyjae Spears, fantasy calc, running back 26. KTC, running back 19. I have not been able to get anything close to running back 19 prices where I have him. So the people that are voting to keep him on Keep Trade Cut, where are you? Where are you in my leagues? Do you want to pay running back 19 prices? Anyway, we know where Dan stands on this one. He's huge on Tony Pollard. Where are you on the situation, Mitch?
It honestly, it's the age gap, man. I can look at it. I actually just had it pulled up. Tony Pollard's 27. Tyjae Spears is 23. I think you could probably split the workload down 50-50. Maybe it ends up being a 55-45, but they've already said both of them are going to get work. Now, if this was an actual, if KTC was right and it was really Pollard's running back 32 and Spears is really running back 19, I'm all about Tony Pollard at that price. I think the fantasy calc is a lot closer. They're pretty much the exact same value. Yeah, Spears is a little bit higher, but not much. Tyjae Spears was fine. He had 100 carries last year, 4.5 yards per carry. He's a perfectly fine back. It comes down to how much do you believe in this offense? And I kind of like this offense, man.
The hype is building.
Yeah, I mean, they came in, they gave Will Levis good veteran wide receivers. Elite? No. But good veterans that know how to help out a rookie quarterback. And I think he left a lot to be desired last year, but Will Levis has a lot to improve on as well. So in my opinion, of all the guys that we've talked about, I think Tyjae Spears kind of has a really large upside, because if Tony Pollard does get injured, Tyjae Spears can take off, right? And he could carry that value into future years, to where if Tyjae Spears gets injured, yes, Pollard is going to give you really good weeks this year, but I'm for certain that he is not going to carry it into future years, because no matter what, Tyjae Spears is going to come back next year, right? So in my view, if I have to, you're not going to be able to add to Pollard to get Spears. That's just a weird trade that's not going to happen. But
I wouldn't have interest in doing that anyway.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that if I'm going to go out and I want to pick a back out of this backfield, it's going to be Spears, and I'm willing to do that on a majority of my teams, especially contending teams.
I actually, at cost or straight up, I prefer Pollard. I'm not as high on Pollard as Dan is, by association. If you were once a Cowboy, you're always a Cowboy to Dan. But I guess unless you go to Philadelphia, maybe. But this is very similar again to the Najee Warren situation, to the Moss Brown situation. I think Pollard's going to be more involved on the ground. Spears is going to be a little bit more involved with targets. Last year, and we remember the expectation for Tony Pollard, even with the injury, he's going to be the lead back in Dallas. He was coming back from the injury. It wasn't great, and we all remember that. But I think as the season went on, he started to come along a little bit. We talk about yards after contact per attempt. He was 18th out of 38 with a minimum threshold. He did have his lowest yards per carry, but I think that was because, like I said, the injury, and then paired with his heaviest workload, he wasn't getting used the way that he previously was in kind of more ideal running back situations. So I think that had something to do with it. But at their current cost, I like Tony Pollard. I know he's 27 years old, but him and Spears, they have the contract through 2026. This is a situation, though, from a real NFL perspective. There are so many times, if you watch the Steelers last year, especially before the offensive coordinator change, if Najee Harris was in the game, it's a run. It's a run. Jaylen Warren is in the game. Okay, we can mix it up a little bit more. But with Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, I think they both do so many of the same things so well. There's going to be a lot of versatility. If Pollard's in the game, they might run, they might pass. Tyjae's in the game, they might run, they might pass. There isn't that predictability. And in a Brian Callahan offense, I think that's going to be really interesting. So can this offense take the next step? From all reports, it sounds like they might be.
So are you willing to buy in this backfield more so than the other ones we've talked about prior?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I sit. Of all of the ones that we've talked about, I really like this backfield and what can happen with it.
Yeah. Ty has a good comment here. You might be able to sell Tyjae for running back 19 prices if you can sell the more receiving work because Hopkins is now out.
Right.
And yeah, he might be back for week 1, week 2, but how much explosiveness is he going to offer? Not developing that offseason rapport even more with Will Levis while he's really meshing with these other receivers, that could be a selling point. Certainly.
Narratives matter with running back twos. I mean, this is what pushes their value up and down. On the field's kind of whatever, but it's the narrative behind it that matters.
100%. It's the narration station. This offseason, every offseason, it's all about the narratives. One last thing here. Spears, like we saw, he was extremely efficient last year. And we talk about the receiving opportunity. He was 16th out of 60 running backs with 1.27 yards per route run. I actually think that could improve a little bit. Maybe the routes come down a little bit, but we saw he was getting the bulk of that work, I think, over Derrick Henry, especially in third down situations. I'd want to double check that. But yeah, this one, I think there's more standalone value.
Yes.
And there's a lot more upside if the other one were to go down.
Agreed.
So I don't know that that's too controversial of a take. So is it fair to say, like, at their cost and potential, you have Titans backfield, and then who would you put second between the Bengals and Steelers?
Oh, Bengals, definitely.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think just because of the price and the way the offenses are going to go. Okay.
Yeah, and how wherever Arthur Smith is, I'm going to rake them pretty low.
All right. I don't want to spend too much time on these next couple, but Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler.
I have an issue with this one. You said this is a running back 2 show. Brian Robinson is no running back 2.
Time. Just training camp battles and running back 2 targets.
Yeah, I didn't read. This ain't no battle.
They were separate. So Brian Robinson, Austin Ekeler. How does this play out here in 2024, Mitch?
I think Brian Robinson's the starter. I think he's a better back at this point. When he's on the field, he gives you everything that he needs. But the one thing with Austin Ekeler is he's so good. Well, he was so good prior to last year, right? And a lot of it is his receiving upside is so high. It's, do you believe that Jaden Daniels will throw to the backs? Maybe he will. Maybe he is one of those few rushing quarterbacks that won't take off immediately and will let plays progress, and then he'll hit those running backs that are sneaking out of the backfield, right? I just don't see it happen. Everything that I saw in college, he's going to do his reads, and then he's going to be more willing to take off and run than he's going to be willing to stay in the pocket, it's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, as far as the receiving upside, that's not going to push me one way or the other because I don't think it's really going to be there. I just think Brian Robinson is the 1A in this backfield, and Austin Ekeler is a really good backup at this point. He is Darren Sproles to me, right? He's a very good elder running back. I almost said elderly, but that would be pushing a little bit too far. But he's not someone that I'm ever going to look to go and, hey, this is a guy that I want to go get a whole bunch of shares of, because if Brian Robinson goes down, Austin Ekeler can take off. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Here, let me throw a few trades at you. Typically we do the rapid fire, but we had a lot of the notes today, so I haven't been hitting you with them. Brian Robinson for 204, and obviously it's difficult whenever you don't know what's happening.
Brian Robinson off the top of my head.
All right. This is a fun one. Start 9 though. Brian Robinson and Keon Coleman or T. Higgins.
T. Higgins.
Really?
Yeah. Dude, I'm all about T. Higgins. I think him and Jamar Chase are going to explode this year.
I think it's going to be a very nice season here. For T. Higgins. Just stay healthy, dude. Brian Robinson for 25 second.
Brian Robinson.
talk about Chase Brown hype. Brian Robinson and Xavier Legette for Chase Brown.
Yeah, package.
And again, we talk about the opportunities. Brian Robinson in a 26 first, so you get some insulated value for Rachaad White.
Oh, yeah, the first and whatever's added to it. Just happens to be Brian Robinson, but I mean, you put,
right,
I don't know, Zach Moss there, I'm going to do that deal too.
And again, I think that kind of goes into the process that we've been talking about. Get the insulated value, you're hoping for decent production out of the back that you acquire as well. And that's no knock on Rachaad White, but any running back in that range, I think that's the move to make. Austin Ekeler, Jahan Dotson, and Brian Robinson. Somebody was stockpiling Commanders, all for Josh Downs. 12 teams, start 10.
I'm going to go the package. I'm just not a huge Josh Downs guy.
Yeah, I think a lot of these trades that even larger packages, it's like Brian Robinson is kind of a throw-in.
Yeah, which is weird because I think he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Commanders this year. Quarterback, running back even.
Earlier in the offseason, I remember I acquired Brian Robinson for a third, and I was super excited about that.
Yep.
And this is a great comment from Josh here, and it was one of the reasons that he's no longer a Charger because he knew how they wanted to use him. But Ekeler said he does not want to be the featured back in the backfield. So I think, yes, he's going to have some receiving work, but like you said, Mitch, how utilized is that role going to be?
It's kind of like the one we talk a lot about it with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. We talk a lot about it with these Justin Fields and the Steelers, right? Not a lot of people are talking about the Commanders, and it might be the exact same scenario. Maybe they could show Jaden Daniels this is like the best way for him to stay healthy is to actually leak these passes. And if he does, then awesome. I love a lot of these backs in that backfield. It's just, I want to see that play out first before I actually buy into it.
All right. So we're more pro Brian Robinson. And I agree. I in the sheets, he's been green for quite some time.
Right.
Fantasy Calc, at least as of the update yesterday, he was 34, running back 34. I have him in the 25 to 31 tier. I think if you can get Brian Robinson plus for Tyjae Spears, I'm in. Market says you can get Brian Robinson plus for Zamir White. And we don't have this on the notes, but Dylan Lobb is making a strong case there in Vegas for that. I think it's going to be Zamir, Madison kind of getting that 1-2 punch early down work. But if that team needs somebody to dump off to, Dylan Lobb, I hate to say a nice best ball option, I think. But also he has that contingent upside that we've talked about. If anything were to happen, and we don't necessarily know how that's going to play out, and the Zamir White market, I'm not too interested.
No, not really. He's the guy I see up on the trade block in so many leagues that I don't see him ever traded because there's just I have him on my team and I know he's going to be this and no one's really offering me his full value yet.
Yeah. All right. So that's Brian Robinson, Austin Ekeler there in Washington. Really quick, Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason. Obviously not going to be all that relevant if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, and he's going to stay healthy. There's no other way. All right. It needs to happen for anybody rostering him. And I have a good, amount of shares there of Christian McCaffrey. But Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, what are you looking at here?
Elijah Mitchell is going to be the first guy off the bench.
Even with the positive reports here, even saying, we like Elijah Mitchell, but Jordan Mason, he's just been giving us something.
The thing is Elijah Mitchell has played 16 games over the last 2 years. I mean, he's just never healthy. So, I mean, if you're going to keep one and you really want him to take off in value, Jordan Mason is probably the guy to have. But what's going to happen is the first week, Christian McCaffrey goes down in DFS, everyone's going to be starting Elijah Mitchell. It's not going to be Jordan Mason, right? But do I ever plan on Elijah Mitchell lasting 10 games if something happens to McCaffrey? Absolutely not. So Jordan Mason might be the guy to have, but you're going to have to wait a little while for that really to pan out.
But probably a situation if your bench is deep enough.
Without a doubt.
Both of these guys floating around.
Yeah, don't leave him on waivers. Without a doubt. He needs to be rostered.
From Dustin, would you rather stash Eric Gray or Trey Sermon?
Trey Sermon. I have a lot of Eric Gray too, but I mean, he's a guy that you don't want to cut just because that Giants backfield, but I don't want to ever play him.
I would take.
Or what do you want 50 fab instead?
I'm looking at this. Probably Trey Sermon, because the way the offense I think is going to go, like Tyrone Tracy, maybe he's more involved than Eric Gray managers would like.
Oh,
where
I think will be. Yeah,
I think there's a little bit more of a separation in the way they'll be used between Trey Sermon and Evan Hall. So I'm looking at my tiers, and that's why I love these conversations. I'm going to have a little adjustment there. Kenneth Walker, Zack Charbonnet. We had a very long discussion / debate in the Dynasty Theory Discord a while back when looking at Kenneth Walker and Zack Charbonnet. Mitch, I think we all know where you stand on this issue.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker is the better running back in my opinion. He's provides more upside. Yeah, does he get some negative yards? Yes, he does. But he's also the guy that's going to run off a 60-yard touchdown run. And so there's people are really buying into what we think the coaches will think. And I think that's the issue, right? Like we think the coaches will like Zack Charbonnet more because we think he's going to give you, instead of getting -1 on a couple rushing plays, he's going to give you 3 instead. But is he going to give you the 60? I don't think so. I don't want to think that we think that the coaches think, you know what I mean? I just think we're kind of just, there's
a lot of thinks in there. There's a lot of things.
I know we're reaching so far, just being like, hey, this could be how it plays out. Kenneth Walker is the better back, in my opinion. I'm more than happy to get him at his value than I am to get Zack Charbonnet at his value. I do recognize that I was wrong 2 years ago. I gave you a lot of crap, John. I said Kenneth Walker can catch passes. There was like 2 or 3 videos of him being able to catch passes. Yes, he can, but they don't throw a lot to him is kind of the issue, right? It's not a Kenneth Walker issue. It's a Gino don't throw to Kenneth Walker issue, right?
It is, but I was going to give you props because yes, the volume isn't necessarily there. And Zack Charbonnet was certainly more involved in the passing game than I think Kenneth Walker managers would like. But Kenneth Walker was running back 11 out of 43 running backs with at least 30 targets in yards per route run. Zack Charbonnet was 38th. So and again, it's because Kenneth Walker gives you that upside and the big play potential. Sure, he is going to have a lot of negative runs, but it's always that hope. And for a while, wasn't that Derrick Henry in that offense?
It was, yeah.
He would get stuffed. He'd be like 11 carries for 20 yards, and then he pops off a huge touchdown in the fourth quarter.
I remember that 98-yard touchdown run that he had there was stiff arming everybody. It was like the very end of the fourth quarter that it happened.
Like it's just so much potential there. Like even if things are looking grim for Kenneth Walker through 3.5 quarters, it's not over from like a weekly stat line perspective. Is the Seattle backfield ambiguous on workload, or more certain to lean towards Kenneth Walker?
I don't think anything's certain. That's the thing. I think that's why people can buy into Charbonnet, because we have a whole new coaching staff there. For me, I think it's definitely going to lean towards Kenneth Walker. I just think he's a far more talented back. But there is the new coaching staff who didn't draft this player. So, but here's the thing: they didn't draft. They didn't. We
cannot talk to either of us.
Charbonnet either. And I just think it's so funny that we're like, no. New coaching staff, they're not going to like this guy. They might have not liked Zack Charbonnet when he was at UCLA. We don't know. So I think there's a lot of, we think we know with this. On this one, I'm betting on talent, man. Kenneth Walker's a better back. That's who I want. Willing to get him at his dynasty value right now.
I think I would lean more towards certainty that it goes towards Walker. Again, at least as certain as we can be in these types of situations. I was talking about rush yards over expected per attempt based on NFL Next Gen stats. Last year, Charbonnet was at 0.18 and Walker was at minus 0.13. So slightly under expected. But again, like that's kind of the nature. That's what you're getting into with Kenneth Walker.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's plenty of opportunity for him to grow, but that's where I am as well. I want to run through very quickly. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterback situations. All I want to know is who starts week 1.
Okay.
And who starts week 8 or 9.
Okay. I like it.
And I don't want to hear, oh, they have a bye week 8, so nobody's starting. All right, first up, Jacoby Brissett and Drake May.
Brissett, then May.
Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
It's Fields and then Wilson.
Do we think, though, like the Steelers aren't on the hook for anything? Like if Fields starts week 1 after Russell Wilson was promised to be a starter, could we see him get released?
The reason why I don't think so is because the Steelers have been in such a bad situation quarterback-wise the last few years that I don't think they're willing to be like, no, Justin Fields is our guy. Like we do see the highlights and Twitter, but if you actually go, I'm sure you read them because you're local a lot more. Justin Fields he has the highlight plays, but he has just as many bad plays as he's had good plays in practice so far.
Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham.
I think it's Bo Nix and both.
I think he's going to continue to develop quickly.
Mm-hmm.
How much of it is coach speak? Like Sean Payton coming out saying Bo Nix, like he knows when the play is dead. He knows when to get rid of it. Said in that aspect, he reminds him a lot of Drew Brees. Is Bo Nix a Hall of Famer?
Yes,
time will tell.
He is.
Time will tell. Maybe I need to get that helmet soon. Bo Nix. All right, Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell out there in Vegas.
I'm going to go Aiden's going to start, but by week 3, Minshew will be the starter.
Wow, pull the plug quickly. Daniel Jones, Drew Lock.
This isn't a real question. I refuse to answer it.
It's a real question.
It's Daniel Jones. Drew Lock is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Unless Daniel Jones goes out and he has an injury, then yeah, Drew Lock might get a start this year. Drew Lock's not starting based off anything that Daniel Jones does on the field.
All right. Matt says here, Wilson is free, so he'll sit on the bench till he's a distraction, is released, traded, or quits. See, that was my thing from like a locker room perspective. You know, so I agree. I'm right there in lockstep with Matt. All right. So now we talked about some running back 2s on the depth chart. I said, let's each pick 3. Who are your like top 3 guys? Forget about cost. If you could just get them on your teams, you're interested.
You said running back 2. So that is Jahmyr Gibbs, right?
Get out of here.
But he is the running back 2.
Smart ass.
Okay. Ray Davis. Ray Davis is my dude. He's the guy that I want. Like, we all know what could happen with the Bills. If some injury happens, Ray Davis can take over. And we've seen the last 8 to 10 weeks of last year that they will count on that running game a lot more. And I think they'll do it moving into this season and future seasons.
Does your Ray Davis love, does it impact the way you look at James Cook from a short and longer term perspective?
No, I love James Cook. This is kind of like a 1A James Cook and like a 2C Ray Davis, but I don't think there's anyone behind Ray Davis that I'm worried about. Second, I'm going to lump them together. It's Blake Corum and Trey Benson. Just if anything happens to that starter there, I think these guys immediately take over. They're going to be huge plays in DFS. Their value is going to spike like crazy. And these are 2 guys to where if anything happens to someone in front of them, it's going to be so hard to trade for them at that point. And I think
both of them fall into that bucket. Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
They both fall in that bucket of they're going to go from 0 to 60 like that.
Exactly.
Like they're not going to give you much. They might spell the starter from time to time. But like you said, like it's not like, okay, they're splitting work and then they have opportunity for more. There's very minimal work and then just boom.
Yep.
I like that call. And I actually think the price on both, I think you can still get at a reasonable.
Oh, they're
spot.
attainable. Yeah, these are guys to where if you want to go out, let's say if you have 10 dynasty teams, you want them on 6. I think you could go get them on 5 pretty easily.
Yeah, and like Blake Corum, I think people were very hot and heavy on him from the jump, and I think that's come down a little bit. Still slightly above market, but it's getting very close. Or the market is slightly above where I have him, but it's starting to close that gap. And then who's the last one for you? It looks like you still have some hopium.
Take Bixby. He's, just reading the training camp stuff. He seems to be doing okay. And I mean, they've wanted to spell Travis Etienne ever since Travis Etienne came into the league. They want to give him help. Tank wasn't able to do it last year. Hopefully he's able to do it this year, because I think if anything does happen to Travis Etienne, whoever that running back 2 is, I think they're going to get a whole bunch of work in that offense.
Okay. No issue. Like Tank, he needs to turn it around. Obviously, the opportunity is there for him.
Yes.
He needs to turn around. Matt says, I'm counting on Ray Davis, Dylan Lobb, and Marshawn Lloyd on my 0 running back teams. I think Marshawn Lloyd is a nice bet beyond 24. Sounds like, I'm not investing in AJ Dillon. I can tell you that.
But he's the running back too.
It seems like maybe the opportunity is not going to be there right off the bat. Yeah. But Dylan Lobb, it's been nothing but great reports coming out of camp there. My guys here, Tyler Algier. I know it's the Bijan Robinson show, but I still think he's going to be involved. He was actually running back 2 in terms of yards per route run last year, and that sample was out of 60 running backs that qualified there. He wasn't necessarily efficient versus expected, but that offense was garbage. All right. And he also faced 8 in the box at the 5th highest clip whenever he did see carries. So I still think he's one that gives you some low end flex appeal on a given week. But then if anything were to happen to Bijan, he's going to be there in what should be a much improved offense. If Ramondre Stevenson misses time, this is so gross, it's ugly. Antonio Gibson, I genuinely believe if Ramondre Stevenson misses time, Antonio Gibson and that offense, I think the way they're going to play it, he gives you top 18 weekly upside. I genuinely believe that. And then from a rookie perspective, at cost, it was like this in rookie drafts. Will Shipley is still one of the best values. He's already getting sprinkled in some work with the ones. He's getting red zone looks in camp. And Saquon Barkley, he isn't the poster child for health. So I think Will Shipley, he gives you a nice little opportunity there. And it might be a little bit more difficult now based on all of the positive reports we've been seeing. But like people have, like, I know Bucky Irving is a little bit more highly sought after because he's going against Rashad White, and we saw how inefficient he was. People are taking Kamani Vidal still from ahead of Will Shipley.
Yeah.
Audric Estime is going ahead. Keaton Mitchell is going ahead. Give me Will Shipley. There's too much upside there. He's the guy I want. Anything else on any
guy
camp battles that we haven't talked
just because
about?
You brought up the rookie, Braylon Allen is still the guy that I really, really want to buy into him, right? We talked to him a little bit last week. So if anything happens to Breece Hall, you would assume Braylon Allen is going to be the guy. It's just, I don't want to put it out in the world that Breece Hall is going to have anything happen to him again, right? Like, I just want that dude to stay healthy. So if anyone the problem is I think Braylon Allen's price is too high right now for being a backup running back. I don't think he's a guy that he isn't a Zack Moss and Chase Brown, right? He's not going to get a whole bunch of work. So he's not startable until something happens to Breece Hall. I just refuse to believe anything will happen to Breece Hall. So I don't have a lot of Braylon Allen on my teams, right?
And it's a lower end. We talked about Blake Corum. We talked about who was the other one you just mentioned? Trey Benson. Obviously, their price to acquire significantly higher than Braylon Allen, but their expected workload, like that could be a 1-for-1, like based on what James Conner and Kyrie Williams are getting, like a 1-for-1 replacement. Braylon Allen is not going to give you that for Breece Hall. At least I don't think so. And again, that's kind of reflected in his price.
Final thoughts.
Mitch, for the 256th time on Dynasty Theory, previously Superflexology. What do you got for our listeners as we wrap up training camp and we're getting ready to hit the road? And I think we're doing a live show in Canton this week.
Exactly. So normally we don't do the store source stuff for final thoughts, but hey, we're going to be in Canton Thursday to early Sunday morning, but we're getting there pretty early on Thursday. So if you're out there, shoot us a DM on Twitter, unless you're in one of the Discords that we're in. Go ahead, message us there, but let's definitely meet up. Let's talk, let's chat. This is what that whole thing's for, is to go meet up with people and have fun. So by all means, if you're out there, shoot us a DM.
I'm extremely excited. And to sound a little bit more excited than the last time we spoke, Mitch, we have some big news coming up.
Yes, we do.
Some big news coming up here at Dynasty Theory. Some changes, all for the better, but we're excited to be able to share that eventually. So
Soon.
for Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks.